again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. One more time, guys. I apologize. This is why I need my boy Blue and Jaime to come back on here and help me out. I accidentally hit the end button. I was talking for about 2 minutes or a minute, and then I looked up and we were no longer live. So sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Hopefully it won't happen again, but that's what happens when I have 4 things open at the same time. So with that being said, let's get back into it. I'm going to be bringing on to the show a viewer from the show, a friend of the show. Her name is Steph C. Steph, again, reintroduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Steph C. Like I said, a friend of the show, viewer. I have a background in criminal justice. I have a degree in criminal justice, specializing in death investigation and so forth. And I have experience working in law enforcement and dealing very closely with these type of offenders, everyone from SKers to unalivers to SAers. So I understand the psychology a little bit, and I understand the criminal justice system.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you joining. I appreciate your insight. You're going to be our fill-in for Big Blue today. So we're going to talk about some things, get your insight, and then we'll talk about the case overall. I do know you recently had a surgery, so you might be jumping in and out. And so if that ends up happening, y'all, we'll wait for her to come back if she does. So just to kind of premise that, the next thing I want to say is thank you to Susan H for kind of sending me this information and doing a lot of the legwork. Because one of the biggest questions that has been out there is, Bryan Kohberger's security job resignation. A lot of people were coming out saying that, there's a document showing that he was forced to resign, that if he didn't resign, he would be terminated or forced termination. Well, there was a TN Online, I think it's like Times Now Online.com article that was written back in July 16, 2021. So this is a while ago. So unless they edited it up, I doubt it. There shouldn't be any bias towards Bryan Kohberger one way or another in this article. And I'll say this, that on the surface, it does kind of seem that, maybe perhaps Bryan Kohberger was one of a few who were getting cut, but we'll see. So I'm going to read this real quick to everybody, and then we'll go dive deep into it. This says, the Pleasant Valley School Board approved the resignations of both high school and intermediate school principals at its meeting on Thursday night. Now, from what I understand, both of those principals, I think, went somewhere else. So I don't think they were a part of the other group of individuals who were resigning due to possible budget cuts, right? So this says here, high school principal Matthew Triolo and intermediate school principal Todd Brainer are among 15 other employees whose resignations were also approved. The others include Hillary Atkins, a teacher at the elementary school, Bryan Kohberger, a security officer, 3 substitute paraprofessional associates, 4 substitute secretaries, and 5 substitute teachers, and casual security officer. So these the others were I'm assuming because they're named is Hillary Atkins and Bryan Kohberger. Others being other than the 15 other employees. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I think they're including those. I don't understand why they would just put their names and not everybody's name. That's kind of weird. Well, anyways, it said that the meeting where Trilio is going was recently reported that Briner. Oh snap! I think we got somebody here. What's up, Big Blue?
What's going on, man? What's going on?
I'm glad you could join. Hey, if you don't mind calling in on the Skype,
Okay.
because I have a guest on the Skype.
All right, give me 1 second. I gotta set it up real quick.
No problem, no problem. I'm glad you made it, man. What a surprise! What a surprise! Now I've shut everything off again. Give me a sec. This is me struggling. Yeah, wrong one too. Dang it! I got too many things open. I swear. There it is. All right. Now, let me get the Skype up while Blue is setting that up. So I have this going right here. All right. I don't know why it stopped sharing the screen. Sorry about y'all. Hopefully you can bear with me on these technical difficulties that are going on. We'll get it straight. All right. Steph, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Awesome.
You want me to?
No. So while Blue's getting all that set up, I just wanted to open up the deal here so that when he does call in, that I can merge him into the call so that way you can hear him and everybody else will also be able to hear Big Blue. So that way we're all on the same page. So this here says that the 15 others were Hillary Atkins, Bryan Kohberger, and a slew of other folks that work at the high school. It was not said at the meeting where Trilio is going. So it's been found out that I believe that they transferred to another school. So I think they got another job. It wasn't anything to do with budget cuts, to my understanding, when it came to that position. It was recently reported that Briner was leaving the school district to accept a position as a principal in Slayton Elementary School in North LA School District. Their school board approved hiring him in a special meeting on Monday. School board director Susan Krig said that the resignations of our high school and our intermediate school principals are, in my opinion, a tremendous loss to the district. So these weren't something that were planned. These weren't the folks that they wanted out. And she even includes saying that it's very sad to see them leave. After his abrupt retirement in June, the school board rescinded the possible I jumped up a little bit. Administration positions were among those being looked into at May when the school district's former superintendent, Lee Lesisco, proposed the furlough of 40 employees. After his abrupt retirement in early June, the school board rescinded the possible furloughs. So this is in early June. Early June, there was no more furloughs. Give me 1 second. Merge. All right, Big Blue, can you hear me? And you're live on air. I know I know you're not on the video, but you are live on air.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Let me just turn off my mic on the other.
Yeah. Mute yourself there, and your audio will be here. All right. So, well, thank you for joining, Big Blue. How you doing, my man?
Been good. Just had to run some errands today, so always running late.
That's all good. Go ahead.
After I get out of work, I got another 8 hours. Well, I would say more like 12 hours before I got to go back, so I got to run on my errands in between and sleep.
Yeesh. Got you, man. Got you. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. I don't know if you heard the first part of the show. We have a special guest, Steph C. She's in the house. Steph, you're still with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, Blue.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
That's awesome. I'm glad you guys are here. Maybe I won't have so many technical difficulties. So Basically, there was what this article is saying is that in early June or prior to early June, it was proposed for some furloughs. They were going to cut people. I guess it's assumed it was some sort of budget cut. And during this time, there was 15 people who had resigned, and apparently 2 principals. One's an assistant, one's the principal. They ended up transferring somewhere else. And so I went in and thought to myself, well, let's go look at this. And thank you to Susan. She brought this up. But this is the minutes from the actual school board meeting. So this is where they're actually put down what occurred. And here, this is the July 15th board education meeting. And here on this page here on DG, hey, roll back up. These are the resignations. Now, in these resignations, we have Hillary Atkins, which was a teacher that was mentioned in the article. And you have 13 others, so a total of 14. Many of them substitutes. Now, Bryan Kohberger is different. His is on 9D. It's down here. He is aligned with Matthew Trullo and Todd Brenner. Now, both of these guys I think they were transferring, so they weren't part of some sort of forced resignation as far as that goes, or wasn't a part of why the other 14 were getting resigned. Does that make sense, Blue?
Yeah.
Am I making sense to you, Steph, that it appears that they have split the 14 others and these 3? Now, we know why the bottom 2, Matthew Trullo and Todd Brenner, why they split. They were transferring because they got another job. We don't know why Bryan Kohberger. Now, also, Bryan Kohberger's effective date is June 2022. Now, the other thing is, if they were cutting these positions solely to save money, do you think that they would fill those positions? No, right? So if we look at the August 26th amendment, and this is where Gerald Radcliffe gets transferred and he's now put in and replaces Bryan Kohberger. So his position was filled. So somebody was getting his paycheck now. It wasn't Bryan Kohberger. So if somebody filled that position, do you think that position was lost? No, or not at least by the school means. I mean, if I have a company, right, and if I hire 8 managers or whatever the case may be, and I'm like, hey man, I need some budget cuts. I'm going to cut a position. So now I'm going to have 7 managers. I'm not refilling that position with somebody else. I have 7 now. That's not the case here. They recruited one of their like casual security guards, which is one of these guys that is probably like in waiting for, somebody to move up or something to happen. And they end up taking a higher role, which ends up being something like this situation here. And so this was replaced on August 27th. Big Blue, if they were planning on forcing resignations and replacing at least Bryan Kohberger, why do you think there's such a wait between July? No, it's not really. It's about a month and a half, about 6 weeks. It's about 6 weeks.
There's summer school. There's no need for school.
True. Security. That's one reason. What about if it wasn't planned? Like it was an abrupt thing. Like if somebody did something wrong.
Yeah, it would take some time to find somebody.
Right. I mean, and not only time to find somebody, but you got to go through the background check. The person got to go do a drug test, the whole 9 yards. I mean, how much time does that really take? It takes a little bit. I don't know if it's good practice to have a position open, for that period of time. But you are correct; it is during the summer, and this isn't a big area. This isn't a large city, so I don't know how the crime is in this place. Stephanie, what do you think about this here, where his position was replaced, not necessarily dropped like the other positions that were lost?
Well, I think that at some point he had a problem or an issue, and they they told him, to go ahead and resign, or basically we're going to fire you, and that they didn't want to lose his position, so they thought it was somebody else. I'm guessing. I'm a little confused about the document and so forth, but I think that's probably what happened.
Right. So you have a group of 14 individuals who resigned, and then you have them listed under one specific criteria. And they don't explain what the criteria is, just that these guys belong to that criteria. Majority of them were teachers, substitute teachers at that. One of them was a regular teacher. Then you had Bryan Kohberger listed under a different grouping with two others whose resignation wasn't forced. So that could be a positive thing for Bryan Kohberger. Maybe perhaps it wasn't a forced thing, and that's why he's there. And so that could be a positive thing there. However, there is that wording in his resignation letter, which is kind of odd. Also, typically when I've seen somebody, and I know this is anecdotal, I mean, it is what it is. But typically when somebody resigns, like on good terms, it's not that form. You know what I mean? It's not that form. It's not that wording that I understand that if I get terminated, or if I choose not to resign, that I could be terminated, things of that nature. So it does seem like an iffy situation. So I don't know. At the end of the day, Big Blue, if you had to put your money on something, what do you think happened here?
Well, if I had to put my money on something, I would say something came up where either he was going to be fired, and they didn't want to look back on his record, bad on his record, because he's pursuing the type of degree he's looking at.
Yeah.
So I think they gave him a chance to say, "Hey, just resign, finish your school, that way you don't have a bad note on your records that you were fired."
Yeah.
But I think,
yeah, and sometimes. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, but
No,
go ahead.
You can go ahead.
No, what I was saying is, a lot of times with that stuff, because I've been a supervisor myself, a lot of times when you have somebody that has personality issues, they may be a good employee, but they have personality issues, and stuff like that. It may be hard to, like write them up and this and that because of a personality issue versus a performance issue. And I think something may have happened with his personality, whether it be, talking to girls or staring at them or following them or being, creeping them basically. And, maybe it was a situation where it's like, look, we're asking you to volunteer, like maybe he said something to a girl or something. This is like a hypothetical. And maybe it's like she complained or something. And maybe it wasn't to the level of, where they really like you said, like wanted to fire him or what have you. But they also didn't want to keep him around. So it's like, it was more maybe like based on personality than, because if you have somebody that's consistently late or whatever, you can write them up and do all that stuff and then eventually, terminate them. This to me kind of sounds like
what if his parents work for the school district? Do you think maybe, they would do, if his parents work for the school district, the school do the parents a solid by saying, hey, quit instead of getting fired. We know your mom and dad. We don't want to F up your life. You think that's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I do.
I think it's a possibility for sure. I mean, I think the whole reason that he got a job was because they worked there. because why would you put somebody as a security officer who's already been kicked out of a program that, where he had the issues with the females and he was kicked out of the program and put around all males? Why would you make somebody like that a security officer unless they did a solid for the parents and stuff like that? And, he did his job for a while, and then maybe he was, and this is pure speculation, maybe he was like creeping or did something or said something that was inappropriate. And they're like, look, we can't have this. We're either going to have to terminate you or, you can resign. So I think it was probably like a situation like that because he has a pattern. You know what I'm saying? And, when people have ingrained personality issues, they're gonna, you'll see the pattern, and it doesn't matter what environment you put them in, that pattern will persist because that's their personality. It's who they are. So, it doesn't really matter the environment, the personality issue is going to come out. And so I feel like they probably said, look, this is a complaint. This could really get you fired. We know you want to be a police officer. We know your parents are good people. You come from a good family or what have you. We'll do you a solid and let you resign type thing.
Yeah, I think that's a high possibility. They did that, and there's also the possibility that he resigned, just signed that paper because it was the boilerplate version of a resignation letter that he could find, and was going to DeSales University and didn't have time to do the security job. I mean, there's a possibility of that, but he was also part-time, and so I think that if it was a full-time job, that probably makes more sense. But a lot of people work, especially part-time, throughout their college. So I don't know. It's all speculation at this time, but there is some odd things about it. It's the fact that his name is separated from the 14 others, and his position was replaced. It wasn't, left open. So I would assume that the other two positions were also going to be replaceable. So maybe that's why those three were bunched together, because those three positions were replaceable positions, not positions that were cut. Now, two were transferred out, and one may have been disciplinary, but at the end of the day, those were positions that need to be refilled. Blue, do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think so. Because, security in the school is like one of the last things I think they want to cut. They would cut custodial, cafeteria, and then substitute teachers first. And then they would cut security because you need security at the schools.
Yeah.
Well, I also heard in one report, I don't know if the report's accurate or not, but there was some type of issue with him there, and they investigated it, and they allegedly found out that he lied. So that may have been the reason why they did it like they did it. I don't know. I don't know, if there's any truth to that, because, it's just in the media. There's nothing to back that up that we've seen so far. But I do remember hearing that report that he lied about during the investigation. Like, I think they had cameras, and that's how they determined that he lied about the situation. And the situation was never clear on what the situation was, but it was just that he lied, and that's why he was allegedly. I mean, that could have been the reason why he was allegedly like, "Hey, look, we're doing you a solid. Just go ahead and resign, but just know, like, you basically would have been terminated. So it's basically like, we're letting you leave, but don't try to come back," kind of thing.
Right. Gene asked, though, what does this have to do with anything with killing 4 people? Well, I think it has quite a bit to do with it, because you're building a profile, and does Bryan Kohberger fit the profile? When it comes to the murder of these 4 individuals, we have an audio from 50 feet away. And in that audio, there's not the sound of emotion from the killer. You don't hear the sound of rage or anger. You don't hear the sound of screaming or breaking a window or breaking down the door because somebody is upset, whether it be a roid rage situation and a drunken situation, or it be a love-struck ex-boyfriend who can't handle the girlfriend moving on without him. Those are not symptoms. Quiet killing like that is not a symptom of an emotionally triggered murders, right? So what do you have? You have silence. So there's a couple of different options. You have that maybe they were assassinated by somebody that is a professional, doesn't care, or, and the more likely thing, the person that took their lives was a BTK, a Ted Bundy, a serial killer, a thrill kill. You know what I'm saying? So that's why when a lot of people say, "Oh man, the fraternity or this person or that person," there's other things too, like somebody out of their mind with rage that they're going to kill 4 people usually aren't planning everything, including not leaving their DNA behind or on a body or any of those types of things. So, that doesn't make sense. You have somebody who is, if there are the BTK type of person, the serial type of person, then you're bound to find some characteristics that you would expect, right? Whoever committed this crime would be calloused, probably struggles with feelings, maybe has little to no remorse. Does Bryan Kohberger, has he ever said that he struggled with those things? He has. What about, somebody who's had this crime? There's going to be some red flags. Some of those red flags could be the forced resignation of being a security guard. The issues that were going on at WSU, right? The Northampton University complaint that he had against them. I know about that one. So
I didn't know about that one.
I know quite a bit about some things, but so all of those things kind of go into play a picture. Now, it doesn't mean that Bryan Kohberger committed these crimes. It just means really doesn't exclude him, right? You expect to not find any red flags, and yet here they are, one by one. Problems with students, problems with teachers, problems at his employers. You know what I mean? So problems with female. These are all things that build up a case of who this person is, and that's just the surface of what we know. Or there could be a lot more, and I know there is.
And the thing is you have people that want to get into the law enforcement profession that, want to help people and do all that and do good and serve their community and so forth. And sometimes they start out like with security, but sometimes when you get, there is an element of people that want to get into law enforcement for the wrong reasons. And the thing is that some people, you put a badge on them, even if it's a security badge, and they feel, they go to their head and they feel like they're entitled. They feel like, they have this authority over people, and take it to the extreme sometimes. I get a controlling vibe from him, and a creeper vibe from him and all that kind of stuff. So I can see you take somebody like that and you put them in a uniform, even though it's just security. I feel like he would probably abuse his power, or do something to that effect. And then maybe when confronted on it, maybe he lied. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't know. Those are all good speculations and good things to think of. But you've told me that you've had some concerns in this case. You think that Bryan Kohberger is the guy. You feel that he's more than likely committed this crime, but you feel that maybe perhaps the case against him isn't as strong, or maybe perhaps crumbling. Maybe. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the case is actually pretty strong as far as from the prosecutor. I don't think the prosecutor is worried about, as far as guilty and we have the evidence and all that. My fear is the shenanigans that Ann Taylor's pulling. I think she's a mediocre attorney at best. But I think the one thing she's doing a good job on is trying to create reasonable doubt, trying to get to just that one juror that can hang, pretty much say not guilty or put it into a mistrial or something to that effect. That's the only way that I think she's really being effective in this case. She's very manipulative, too, as are a lot of defense attorneys. But I just have a fear, because a lot of the stuff that I feel that she's when we have these live hearings, she's saying things so that Bryan Kohberger hears her, but she's saying things also so the public hears her. She's very distinct in her words, and I feel like she's trying to create that reasonable doubt. And why I feel like they have solid evidence. And look at all the evidence in the OJ case, and they still, they brought in elements of reasonable doubt. And
well, that's because the officers had some part into that. Had the officers just done their job, not planted anything, if they did, I don't know the details of it, and or if you had some better officers. I mean, just because they were crappy officers doesn't mean they were wrong in that situation. As far as who the person committed the crime. Now, were they wrong about the things that they said and did? Yeah, 100%. But I want to say this. Corvette Blue says there's an article regarding Bryan and another security guard saving a woman's life at school. I mean, that's great, but how many other officers, you can think of your favorite officer that's done something horrible, and I'm pretty sure he's saved somebody or done something good in his life. Just because you've done that doesn't mean, I think BTK was in, I think he was he's installed security, but the Golden State Killer, wasn't he in law enforcement? So,
yes. And the thing is, that may have been a cover for what he was doing. And that may be why Bryan was trying to pursue that as like a cover and so forth. But there was also, I don't know if it was the article that viewers are referring to or listeners are referring to. There's also an article that, he was sort of involved in it, but they said that his only involvement was he went to go get the AED. He didn't perform CPR. He went to get the AED kit and was gone for a little bit. And by the time they got there, the ambulance crew was there or what have you. Again, the validity of that, I don't know. It's just speculation. It's something that I read. So he was included because he was just on duty and a part of it when it happened, but that basically he didn't have hands-on in saving her. So
that could have been one of the triggers too, seeing somebody almost lose their life. Maybe he got some sort of feeling behind it. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know the extent of that situation. Now, when it comes to what you were saying as far as Bryan Kohberger and worried about, maybe perhaps what Aunt Taylor's doing right now, getting this out to the public. Are you concerned about that, Big Blue? Does that concern you that this is going to have some sort of effect on a potential jury, and perhaps Bryan Kohberger is going to get off on something that is done pre-trial versus when all the evidence is placed in front of us?
No, I don't think so. Because, that's the main part of the trials, that they're going to have to reiterate all the information, get the jury informed of what they have against him, and they have to make a decision from there. And they haven't released all the information to us. They've released all the information to each other. So there's probably some damning evidence in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the reason I was, interjecting the OJ cases, because, I'm older, and I was literally going through my criminal justice degree when that case was going on. And so the thing is the point I was trying to make in that case is all the evidence was there. Even if you exclude the evidence that they say that he was tampered with, the thing is, even if you exclude that, there's more than enough evidence to show that he committed this crime. He 100%, had committed the crime. And even some of his lawyers were surprised that they got a not guilty verdict. A lot of that stuff was the prosecution messed up on. I mean, I've read all the books and all that kind of stuff. But the point that I make with the Bryan Kohberger thing is you can have 100% evidence and all this other stuff, but if you impugn how that evidence was taken, or I'm worried about him getting off on a technicality, because, you know, she's going for all these police records and all this and that or whatever. And there's so many hands in the pot that sometimes things can look amiss, or jury or people and juries and viewers will listen to it, and you know they'll concentrate on like the CPA. Well, the CPA or I'm sorry, I forgot what it was called. You know,
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, real quick though. With what Ann Taylor's doing right now, she wants it to be public now. So for her to want it to be public, you would think it's something and for you, Blue, also, you would think it's something in favor of their client, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
why have it public now when it doesn't mean anything? And not during court, during the real trial, when it means something, when you have jurors that are actually going to be paying attention, who are going to be deciding whether this man is guilty or not. Why do it in front of a bunch of other people whose minds really don't matter at this point? Well, it's probably because, and like she mentioned, that the information that she has and stuff isn't going to be used in court. Probably isn't going to be used in court. Now, this is information that's beneficial to Bryan Kohberger again, because this is information that they want out. So that's why she's harping. That's why she wants this public, and it's going to be invalid anyways. Now, for me, I think there's a simple solution to it. What do you think the solution to this is, Blue?
I think when it comes to the information she wants out,
well, not so much that, like she wants information she wants information out. She wants it out now, and statements that who she has said make one to believe that information is not going to be allowed in court, right? Whether because it's the IGG stuff, right, and some of the stuff that the FBI did that's not admissible in court, that's not being used against Bryan Kohberger, like the IGG. So she wants it out now. So that tells me it's to have something in favor of Bryan Kohberger, to have it now and not, put that out there in the trial when it counts. Tells me, and like she said, some of the stuff it's not going to be used in trial, but she wants it out. So it has to be beneficial. And if it's not coming out in trial, and they know it's not coming out in trial, like, what are we talking about, right?
Yeah, I think it's more like to put some doubt in people's minds. That way it's not a closed jury when they go in. Because it is true. Sometimes in trials, they have all this information, but half of it doesn't get used sometimes. Because you only want the stuff that's going to, get them prosecuted.
Right. Alicia asks, was he in school at the time he was working this job? I believe so, because this is back in 2021. What were you going to say there, Steph?
Well, I mean, basically, that's what I'm talking about. I feel like she's focusing on. Well, I feel like she knows the evidence is strong, and when the evidence is strong, a lot of times defense attorneys will try to exploit or try to create reasonable doubt in the minutia of if one person made a mistake or this or that or whatever, then all the evidence has to be bad, or this is reasonable doubt, or they're treating him unfairly, or they're trying to frame him. A lot of defense attorneys will go that route. They can't impugn the evidence, so they try to impugn the police. And that was why I was corresponding the OJ case to, because the evidence was really, really, really strong, but he got off because they impugned the police. And what outsiders looking in, they think, well, why did they start here? Why did they start over there? It seems like it's out of sequence of events. Well, maybe they started somewhere because they found a clue, and that's where they had to start at, and everything, and they had to backpedal from that. And so maybe that's why it's in backwards order, or maybe why, there's different times and different things. They're like, they sent the knife sheath off to the lab, and their lab wasn't able to find it, so they had to get more testing and more technology And then that's when that came up and stuff like that. But I just feel that the more convoluted and and the more smoke and mirrors she throws up, the more you're sort of tampering with the jury pool. I mean, we already see that by her calling the people. I mean, you're sitting here in court saying, "Oh, we don't have all the evidence. We don't have this. And so forth." And it's like, okay, well, if you don't have the evidence to look at the case, why are you focusing on the jury pool right now? You should be focusing on not just trying to get that evidence, but going over the evidence that you have. But I think the evidence that she does have is strong, so she's trying to impugn other things.
Right. And I get all that. I think they're making a big mistake, in my opinion, because the defense. I would not move. Yeah. I would not want to move this trial. And the reason being is there are a lot of people who follow this case, and those that actually live in Moscow, probably some of those that do. There are folks that have come into our channel, on our panel, who are from the area, who believe Bryan Kohberger is innocent. They also believe that, or don't care who it was. They just say that they just know Bryan Kohberger was innocent, which is out of this world. But and that person, I think, is in Pullman, not necessarily in Moscow, but is fairly close to Moscow. So I am, for one, in favor of a change of venue. That way, those that are a little bit further out aren't as involved involved into the case, know as much into the case as one that's probably around there. And I think this extends to, the news. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that don't watch the YouTubes and stuff like that, but there might be people that are watching the Idaho news and all those other things and seeing this back and forth argument between Ann Taylor and Bill Thompson. And I think that there's a higher chance to find somebody who already has their mindset that Bryan Kohberger is innocent before the trial, closer to where this crime occurred versus further away. Now, I know that there's a lot of people who watch this and have watched this around the world, but I've had a lot of people watch our channel. I think we had 7-8 million, somewhere around there, 10 million views last year. And that's throughout all platforms. And we have the ability to see where people are watching us from. And Moscow, Idaho really wasn't high on the list. I mean, there was a handful, but not as much as you would think. Now, I'm not saying that, they don't watch any other channels. If they're not watching mine, obviously they could be. But I found that because there was a limited amount, and from what I have heard is, a lot of people got tired of people getting blamed in their community for things. And so I think a lot of people did turn it off. But when it comes to the news and all this stuff, it's back in the public view there. People are going to be invested in that area and going to watch it. So I would prefer this to go as far as possible in Idaho, away from Moscow. That way, when it comes down to the trial, it's solely based on the evidence. And that's the way it should be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yes. Yes. I mean, there are pros and cons for it both, but that's what I'm saying. She's focusing on all these other things, but not. It's like she's dancing around the evidence. I don't know. That's just what it feels like to me, and I don't feel like this judge has a backbone. So,
I agree.
I know that. I don't think. I mean, I think he's being cautious, which is understandable because he doesn't want to overturn, but I just feel like he's allowing the defense to kind of run him, instead of him running the courtroom and so forth and being stern with them. And then I don't know. And then, I know Jay Logston hasn't really been too involved, even though he's one of his attorneys. And I kind of wonder if they're disagreeing on how to proceed with the case and so forth. So I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Gotcha. What were we going to say, Blue?
I mean, that can happen because look at what's happening in the Richard Allen case. I mean, the judges kind of temporarily removed the lawyers, and now the lawyers are filing an injunction or something because they think the judge is incompetent and want him removed.
Her.
And even though he allowed him back to cover their case, or her. My bad, but so that it.
Yeah, throw a wrench in what you were saying, Blue.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I get what you're saying, though. I think that there is a lack of backbone in this court system, right here in this situation here. I was actually talking to Steve Goncalves the other day, and I mentioned that to him. I was like, man, this is very reminiscent of like when a police officer pulls over somebody and that person is another officer from somewhere else, or a high ranking officer, or a detective, or a lawyer, somebody that has equal or possibly even more knowledge of the law than yourself. And you can see hesitation, you can see all these other stuff. And I think it turns into some mistakes. One being like, for instance, this whole alibi bull crap that he has, and allowing it to go on this long and extended and extended and extended. And I know people are going to say, well, oh man, the prosecution hasn't given the defense all the evidence. Well, yeah. And I will say this. I think that the prosecution should hand over the evidence to the defense. And I think that the defense should hand over the alibi to the prosecution. And I think both of those things should be done in the order in which it was deemed rightful, legally, everything else. And that is Bryan Kohberger saying exactly where he was at, if he plans on using an alibi. If he doesn't, then you don't have to say anything. You can keep his mouth shut. But if he plans on using an alibi as a defense, that is the law there in Idaho. I don't know about in any other state, but that's what it is there. What do you think, Blue?
Hey, Daniel.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to step out for just a second. I'll be right back.
No problem. So that's what I'm thinking, Blue.
I mean, I really want to hear where he really was, because if it proves that he's innocent, then why are you sitting rotten in jail? Let's get you out. If it's not you, let's get the right person in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's anything that he's going to say at this point that would change that. Maybe a while ago, when things were still valid. Like, for instance, if he would have said, man, I was at the Wawa Park that night, and this was, November or December, right, back in 2022. And they can go check their cameras in the Wawa Park. They can go and talk to hunters and wildlife filmographers, or any of those folks that may have had something out there like a trail cam or anything like that to find any evidence whatsoever that he was out there. And he would want that. That would work in his favor, because if somebody found that, then obviously he's not the car that's driving around at 4:00, meaning he's not the guy, right? But he didn't do that. He waited, almost 2 years to tell people the general area where he may have been, which he still hasn't said specifically at what time he was at the Wawa Park.
Yeah.
So, why wait so long? Is it because any evidence that could have proved you were there, or maybe perhaps not shown you ever showing up there, may no longer be in existence, may have been deleted over, may have run its course, the whole 9 yards? What do you think, Blue?
I mean, I think that's exactly why they waited forever to say exactly kind of where he was, because everything gets, recorded over a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so much storage in some of those facilities. After a certain while, it gets deleted. Some places only a week, some places a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they were, when the case started, right away they were asking for whatever footage that was possible, because some of it gets destroyed.
Yeah, that's true. And even at that, he's still not really saying where he was at the specific time. In fact, the only argument that they say that they're gosh dang it, what's the word I'm looking for? Specialist, their expert, is fighting is a 3:00 passing in front of Floyd's cannabis shop. And so what that tells me is if they're arguing that, then they don't know where he was at 4:00 because they don't have anything that puts him somewhere else at 4:00. So what they're probably arguing is saying that what probably happened is Bryan Kohberger probably put his phone in one of those bags that stops, everything. I can't remember what they're called, but it's equivalent to putting it like in a microwave, right? Can't get anything on it. It's basically like an airplane mode at that point. And so you drive around, you commit the murders, whatever the case may be, and then you pull it out. And this may be the reason why he actually pulled his phone out. He pulls it out several miles down the way, but he pulls it out and it captures cell service again. That way he can prove later on, if he ever got caught, that he can say, hey, I never turned my phone off. I was just driving around this rural area and I must have just lost connectivity. You guys can check my phone. My phone never turned off. My phone never went into airplane mode. It never did any of those things. It just lost service. Right. And what they could be saying is, well, even if I lose service, you guys should still be able to tell where I'm at. And you guys aren't saying where I'm at. You guys aren't giving us that information. And then the prosecution is like, we can't give you, what we don't have / what do you call it? That's why they're arguing, the defense that is, hey, his phone was on. So there should be locations. If there is no locations, the police either lost it or destroyed it. And that's exactly what they're saying. So that's my speculation as to what it could be. What do you think about that, Blue?
Yeah, to me, he the smartest thing for him to have done was left it at home. Not even turn it back on and off. Learn the routes to where you went and where you were doing.
I like this comment here, though, real quick. My Rastafa says speculation is not knowledge. There is more speculation as to try to prove Bryan Kohberger's somewhat innocent than there is in any other thing. Granted, there's some speculation as to why he lost his job or whatever the case may be, but there's some hard facts and evidence that put him there. And there's nothing that says it was somebody else. Not a dang thing. 0.1 hard proof of evidence that cannot be logically crossed out by other means. Anyways, carry on, Blue.
It's one of those things where he's doing himself a service by not talking, but also doing himself a disservice if he's innocent and he can prove where he was. Maybe he just wants a payout at the end.
Nah, he committed this crime, dude. He messed up. Here's the weird thing, dude, and I find this to be ironic. People will say, man, he made a lot of dumb mistakes and yet surprised that he got caught. Isn't a result of making dumb mistakes getting caught? You know what I mean?
That's part of it.
Right. I mean, if you make a dumb mistake, then you're probably going to get caught. He got caught. He got caught relatively quick. What, 7 weeks? Shoot. How long was BTK out on the run, or Ted Bundy, before they caught up to him? This guy got caught on his first try. Made those mistakes.
But nowadays, man, there's cameras everywhere. There's tracking on all phones now. So, I mean, even though here the phone didn't track him there, but it does show him out at that time of night after the incident happened. But is it a coincidence? Who knows?
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, I'm back.
Oh, great. Glad you're back. And so, yeah, man, I honestly, like the other day, I was listening to another channel, and a guest on this guy's channel was trying to defend Bryan Kohberger. And they said that the White Elantra in Oregon came back to somebody who lives in Colorado. and that if you track down the person that owns the house at 1122 King Road residence, tracks down to another person who also happens to live in the state of Colorado. I don't even think they live in the same city or area, but they both just come back to Colorado. And they began to proceed to say, or he began to proceed to say that, I don't believe in coincidences. But yet, the coincidence that Bryan Kohberger was out that night at the same time that a person who's about to commit a quadruple murder, who drives the same car that he does without a front license plate, who's about the same build and height, who commits the murders while Bryan Kohberger is not in service. Let's just say he lost service. He was the only person who lost service and had service technicalities in Pullman, Washington. The only one inside Pullman for 2 hours straight. He lost service, comes back. It's south of Moscow because he got lost, apparently, maybe. That's why he turned around. And even though, at that point when you turn on your phone, the fastest way to get back to Pullman, if he was lost, isn't the route that he took. It would have been to take a U-turn and go back and go down Palouse River Drive, and you would have been there in about 12 minutes. Well, anyways, so during this time that he's doing all this, some guy is committing the murders who also just so happens to have his DNA on him. Bryan Kohberger's DNA, that is. And it's only Bryan Kohberger's DNA. It's not anybody else's. It's a single source. And so, a lot of people will say, oh, man, you shed DNA everywhere. Your DNA is everywhere. Well, how would you get like Bryan Kohberger's DNA? You know what I mean? And not somebody else's. If Bryan Kohberger touched something or rubbed up against somebody or passed somebody in passing, well, don't you think that those items would have other people's DNA as well, especially if it was, passed by or somebody else? Let's just say, in that moment, he rubbed shoulders with somebody. Well, you don't think that shoulder, that piece of clothing is going to have that person's DNA? Well, why isn't that person's DNA also mixed in with Bryan Kohberger's DNA? It's not. It's just his. So all these things, that's not a coincidence. But the fact that the white Oregon that was crashed came to some random person in Colorado, and the person that owns the house on 1122 King Road came back to somebody else in some other city in Colorado, that's too much of a coincidence. What do you think about that, Big Blue?
Yeah, I think it's crazy, but there was a news report in the beginning. And it said, that it was linked to the house. I remember that.
Nah, I don't remember it saying it was linked to the house, man.
It was said it was linked to like a
that was a Reddit dude.
Group. Yeah.
No.
It came out in the news though.
Nah. I mean, it was linked to an investment group who was owned by somebody who lives in Colorado, but it's not anything to do with the person that owned the car in Oregon.
Yeah, I know. But I remember there was like a cross with the information.
The only cross was that it was in Colorado.
Yeah. But I remember the report specifically said that it was part of the investment group that owned that house. That's what maybe that guy's getting confused from.
I think so. The thing is, it's not so much that, it's that people are confusing the fact that the guy, the registered owner of the car in Oregon came back to somebody in Colorado, and they own some investment group owns this car or owns something. They live in Colorado somewhere. Now, obviously, you can't use your own car to commit a crime. So the theory is that investment group went out and stole this person's car. And because they're in the state of Colorado and they want to go and commit the crime. And it just so happens that while they're doing that, I don't know how they would have gotten Bryan Kohberger's DNA on them, but while they're doing that, Bryan Kohberger's out living his best life in the Wawa Park. I don't believe it. Well, anyways, so
I gotta get going, guys. I gotta work tonight.
Sounds good, Big Blue. We're probably gonna be jumping off here pretty soon too. And so yeah, I don't buy it. I don't. And when it comes down to a jury, and I'm hoping that this thing ends up getting a change of venue, because that way it'll be honestly just solely on the evidence. And I think they have more than enough to convict this guy. You know, all these arguments that we're hearing right now, including this next one, according to Ann Taylor, is not something that's going to be heard in trials. So the 12 jurors that they're going to be selecting, it's not something they're going to be previewed to. So what difference does it make? What do you think, Steph, before we head out?
Well, I want to make one comment on the car before I make the comment about what you just said. So the thing is, was the car, the white car from Oregon, was it missing its front license plate? Because if it had,
I think it was missing the front bumper.
Okay, but so we don't know if it was missing the license plate or not.
I mean,
you know
maybe not. But even if it isn't, you know, Portland, Oregon, or wherever it was found was like 5 hours away, right? Yeah. And this car was December 19th, right? This car was found December 19th, December 20th. The Moscow Police Department put out a information, one of those, you know, every now and then they were bringing up those like updates on their website, and they brought up the update on the white Elantra, and they're like, it's not related. And the reason why they knew it wasn't related is because they already knew which white Elantra they were looking for by then. And December 20th is when they got Bryan Kohberger's name from the IGG. They probably had somebody go out there, run the VIN number, didn't come back to Bryan Kohberger's car. I left it at that, and it's pretty much what it was. You know, you know, but did it have a front license plate or not? I have no idea. I know it didn't have a back license plate.
Right.
That was the one that was.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that was the one that was missing. But if they took off the back, they probably took off the front. But the question is, did it have the front license plate when it got into the collision?
Yeah. So, you know, but and then to your other point, yes, I think there needs to be change of venue. I feel there will be change of venue because Ann Taylor is pushing for change of venue, and this judge seems to give her what she wants. So I feel like there will be change of venue. I don't think he has the backbone to tell her no. And so, you know, you have a bigger jury pool there, and that's a jury pool that I think she's kind of trying to speak to, you know, because she may know he's already, you know, in the minds of a lot of people in Moscow, he's guilty. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in, you know, like Boise or whatever that think he's guilty too. But because the population is bigger there, it's like you're going to have more people that are also going to think that he's innocent. And what I'm worried about is like what they call a stealth juror, you know, is somebody getting on there knowing that they're going to vote, you know, innocent. But, you know, maybe in voir dire, they said, oh, yeah, I can be partial, I can be this and whatever. And then, you know, you go to the trial, they go to jury, and then all of a sudden you find out this person's not who they said they were, as far as like they weren't being non-biased, and they got on for the sole reason of trying to find him not guilty. So, you know, I mean, to me, I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I don't want to harp on OJ too much, but the point I'm trying to make is you can have really, 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 really strong evidence, and it can still go south. And just like, because what I'm saying with that particular case is because, okay, just because somebody screwed up over here and made this mistake over here, or may have done this or that or over here, the evidence is still strong enough that, you know, he killed those two people. And the thing is that just because somebody messes up over here does not mean, or made a mistake, doesn't mean that he didn't kill those people. So same thing in this case. It's like you could find a mess up, a technicality or whatever, because the evidence is dealt with by human beings, and human beings make mistakes. So, you know, and the thing is that that's what I'm worried about, because it's like and I'm just using that case as an example, you have really, really strong evidence. I mean, who goes and picks up their kids bleeding at a crime scene? You know what I'm saying? Because his blood was at the crime scene. You know, so that, I mean, just that type of stuff. And it's like, yet he was still acquitted. And it's like, because the juror chose to focus on this little minutia or these mistakes over here or what have you, and wanted to say that that was reasonable doubt. But you had, it's like you're focusing on the 5% of the evidence and not the 95% of the evidence that he did do it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, because there's always margin for error. There can be mistakes. There can be this or that. But there's no other, like in that particular case, there's no other evidence that anybody else but him did that. And same thing with Kohberger. There's no other evidence so far that they've shown that it's anybody but Kohberger. But yet we're talking about, you know, police training records. We're talking about the lab stuff. We're talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, there's no argument of innocence.
Exactly. And it's like, you're not, you know, that's not really, it's like if you don't have, you know, it's like you're trying to go after somebody and they're impugning you with facts, then you attack them personally. And so it's kind of like, that's sort of the tactic. It's like she's trying to, you know, attack these people, you know, different people that, you know, do in the labs. And that's what it's going to with, you know, requesting this IgG stuff and everything. It's kind of like what it's headed down. She's focused on that 5%, you know, or whatever. I mean, the thing is like, you know, she can say, oh, well, the police lied or something like that. The police are allowed to lie in certain instances, you know. And so the thing is like, but she'll try to focus on, you know, she could try to focus on different stuff like that. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he killed those 4 people. Right.
If there was lies, let's just say lies to the media that the police were giving, which I don't think they did, but let's just say that there was. That's not something that can be brought up in court either way. It's not evidence. You know, the only thing that's brought up in court is evidence. And I know a lot of people are like, oh man, only one person has to get on that jury and or, you know, one person thinks he's innocent. It's not necessarily true. Yeah, a majority have to think he's innocent for him to be acquitted. You know, if there's 1 or 2 people who are out there that are saying, you know, no matter what, Bryan Kohberger is innocent, he'll get a mistrial. That doesn't mean that he's going to not be tried again. And if that ends up happening, I think that's something that's also in favor of the prosecution, because now they know how Bryan Kohberger's defense team plans to defend their client, and you know, they can come back with a different attack, different jurors. They probably have to change the venue again, but hopefully try to find people who aren't aware or didn't watch the initial hearing, which if there was 2 people that thought Bryan Kohberger was innocent in that hearing, you know, that was beneficial for him, you know. So they're not going to be aware of that. Now they're going to be aware only of the new way that the state and the defense plan on trying the case. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, I'm not. Well, the only thing is I'm not worried about a mistrial. I'm worried about an all-outright acquittal.
Nah,
you know, because it just takes that one person. It just takes that one person, you know, to mistry it. But again, I mean, you have too many people that feel like that he's innocent, which I just can't even fathom that.
Right, but that's,
to me, it's
there would have to be that many people that don't get, you know, there's a process with the jury, and they go through them, they investigate who these jurors are and stuff like that. So I understand maybe possibly 1 or 2, maybe even 3 kind of getting in there, and maybe they can convince 1 or 2 other people. But I mean, I really don't even think that's a lot. Like, I really think maybe 1 person might be able to get in there. They might be able to convince 1 or 2, but I don't think so. I don't think this is going to be something that once the evidence is in trial and you're preview to only that evidence, unless this, you know, secret spy starts telling things to the jury that is not in the court, well, then somebody overhears that, one of these other jurors hears that and sees that, they report that, they're gone. And so, you know, I really don't think that this situation is as out of control as most people think, or as the defense is trying to allude it to be.
Well, Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. But I just, you know, to me, it's not being handled well, and that doesn't give me faith that it's going to be handled well and appropriately. So that's just kind of a worry of mine with this case. But and the amount of people that, while they have the right to their opinion, think that he's innocent. I don't know how you can look at the evidence that we have now, just a little bit of it, and think that he's not guilty, and they want to focus on like the minutia of it and stuff like that, and they want to try to make, well, you know, that one person going in to kill 4 people. Well, I don't think they talk about it like that, but it's like, I don't think he went in there to kill 4 people. I think he went in there to well, I actually think that he went in there to maybe take somebody by knife point, you know, possibly. And with Kaylee being in the bedroom, that sorted all that, and it changed the situation. Then it's like people started hearing stuff, and then, you know, Xana was already up, so it just kind of spiraled. I don't think he walked into that house intending on killing 4 people.
Yeah, the only person, right?
I
Well,
mean,
the only person that knows that answer is the defendant. You know.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is that if your intent is to go into a house and kill 4 people, a knife is not the best thing to use, because there's too many issues that could happen with a knife. So my point is, you know, all these people are like, you know, oh, you know, he killed 4 people. One person couldn't possibly do that. Yeah, it's possible, and it's possible in a short amount of time, and it's possible to have all those stab wounds because of rage. You know, a level of rage that you and I may not be able to understand because we don't have that type of rage. But what I'm saying is, you know, everybody keeps talking about how educated he is and this and that or whatever. If he's that educated and he went in there to kill he went in there to kill all 4 people, I don't think he would have taken a knife, because there can be too many issues with it.
I mean, but if you use something else that's louder, then you're going to give away what you're doing. And so, well, I mean, I think the knife was more of a, if this is a person who is, let's just say this is a sexually motivated crime, not necessarily meaning that he did anything sexually at the crime scene, but if it was a sexually motivated crime, a knife is a very, you know, it's close range, it's intimate, you're right there. That would be one reason why to use it. So, you know, if his sole purpose was like, you know, I'm a professional killer and I need to kill 4 people, then yeah, you're probably right. Just go in there and pop them. But, you know, somebody who's not in the right mind, and if they're one of these like BTK type of folks, you know, serial offenders, and they get off on these type of things, you know, being very personal with a knife could be the reason why they used it. I want to answer this real quick. Becky says, but if somebody made a mistake and they don't find it and he is innocent, then you're killing an innocent man. Well, he has to also like bring up where he was at, and maybe they can find if there was a mistake. How do we know if there was a mistake made if he doesn't tell people where he was? You know, it'd be very easy if he were to say, hey, you know, I was over here at that specific time and place. Then they can go find video surveillance, things of that nature, to go and prove that, hey, maybe he wasn't out there and there was somebody else that they need to find. Now, if you're referring to the IGG and the IGG not being disclosed, and Taylor saying that they could have made a mistake, yada, yada, yada. Well, the IGG is kind of like, what's the best way I can put it? It's like trying to solve a problem with your mind, right? And the STR profile that swabbed Bryan Kohberger is like answering that problem with a calculator. So if somebody were to say, hey, you know, hey, Daniel, what is 200 plus 200? And I think about it and I say, you know, I think it's 400. So we check the calculator, said 400, then I'm right. If I said, you know, I think it's 500, and you check it with the calculator and it says 400, then I'm wrong. So when it comes to the S&P profile, when it comes to the IGG, they didn't test Bryan Kohberger's DNA or to the DNA on the sheath. They merely said, we think it's that guy. Now, if they made a mistake during that process, the person that they pointed at wouldn't have matched. It would have been that 500 when it would have been 400 situation. if it matched, if they say, hey, we think it's that guy, and then you go to the STR profile, which would be the calculator in that same situation, and that verifies, the 1-for-1 comparison by 5 octillion times, then that tells you that the IgG was done correctly. So I don't understand this whole thing about a mistake. If there was a mistake made, it would not have pointed at Bryan Kohberger. It would have pointed at somebody else. And that matching to somebody else would have came back inaccurate, meaning they made a mistake. So I don't think there was a mistake made. Not at all. Oh, man, I jumped up. Here's Art. Art Reeves says, love the DTS, very objective analysis. Thank you so much, Art. We appreciate you so much. And I saw so many people giving us love tonight. I appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. Mr. Rastafa says, if there's evidence of more than one weapon used, then maybe there is doubt. They don't even have the K-bar knife apparently used. I mean, true, and that's going to be an obstacle that the prosecution is going to have to come across. They don't have the murder weapon. But if you end up finding out, and that's why that speculation is, if it was a different one, we don't know that it was a different one. There's nothing out there that said it was a different one. From all we understand is that everybody was stabbed with a single fixed blade knife, and the K-bar knife sheath was left behind. One easy way to tell is if you find, well, maybe not. I assume that if you find DNA inside one of the bodies from one of the victims that like, for instance, let's assume that Kaylee and Maddie were attacked first, and you find no evidence of Ethan or Xana, so that kind of tells you the order in which they go. And let's just say you find DNA of Kaylee and Maddie alongside with metal fragments, and you have metal fragments in both or all 4 of the bodies, because when a knife hits bone, it's going to have some micro fragments. They're going to be able to test to determine if they all came from the same place. And so we don't know the answer to that now, but those are pretty standard things that they should be checking. I'd be concerned if they don't. But and those things are going to end up being quite easily proven in court. In fact, that's not even something that the defense is arguing. A lot of people argue a bunch of different things, but the defense doesn't have those arguments. Like, some people are saying that the white car that's seen in the surveillance on Linda Lane isn't the killer, that they were driving to the Queen Road residence and they were waiting for something there, and they were a part of that. They had nothing to do with the Queen Road killings. And my thought to that is Bryan Kohberger is saying that he wasn't in Moscow. That's one thing that we got from him. He claims he's never went to Moscow. So if the person in that white vehicle and the driver of that white vehicle is the killer, and Bryan never went to Moscow, then that person isn't Bryan Kohberger, and that pretty much exonerates him. So those that are arguing, saying that they want it to not be the person in the white car, are merely also arguing that, or leaving an opening that it still could be him. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to probably call it a show here pretty soon. What are your final thoughts and your thoughts on all that?
Well, first of all, I mean, the thing is that here we go again with this second knife that insinuates maybe a second person. There's just, at this point, no evidence of that. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people are focusing on these what ifs or whatever and stuff like that. There's no evidence at this point that we see that there's a second killer. And I would like to touch on the fact, something that you said earlier about the sexual motivation. A lot of times when you have these kind of killers, like thrill killers, or personally, I personally I'm split on this case, but personally, I think that he probably went in there by knife to probably take somebody out of the house, like, with a knife, like don't scream type thing, and was going to take them out. And it didn't happen that way. Right. So that's kind of what I think. A lot of these crimes, especially ones that involve knives, and with these thrill killers and all that, have an underlying sexual deviancy. And, you know, and the knife is a phallic symbol to them, to these, you know, and it's kind of like, it's a control thing. It's like, you know, if I can't have this person, I'm going to, you know, so, and SA is a crime of control, not, you know, necessarily a sexual one, but you have those two components together, which it seems to be the case with Bryan Kohberger. And I think that that was probably his intent. I mean, my point in saying this is that a lot of people think, oh, he went in there and he killed 4 people. I don't think for a second that it was the intent to kill 4 people. I think that there was either he wanted to kill one or he wanted.
There's
Go ahead.
there's no way we can tell if his intent was 1 or 4, to be honest. Like,
Right. No.
It sounds like to me, this person, whoever committed this crime, went through a lot of planning.
Right.
From what I've heard from law enforcement, is that they thought initially that whoever did this was very, very intelligent, and they went through a lot of planning, and there's a lot of evidence of that. You know, just the mere fact of the route that he took to get back to Pullman to allegedly avoid, you know, the investigation and those type of things. And so when I see or hear that, you know, all this planning that is believed to have done, I mean, he didn't leave DNA behind. There's no DNA in his car. So, I mean, he did some planning. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, no DNA in his car. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, where would you expect to find DNA more likely? On the body of a victim where a knife was used and there was no time to clean up that situation because the guy left and took off in a white Elantra at a high rate of speed, or, you know, a car that somebody has forensic, you know, experience in and has 7 weeks to clean. And you're probably going to be more than likely find DNA on the body where there was no cleaning done and those type of things. It's more than likely. And yet they tested Bryan Kohberger's DNA off of a knife sheath, which tells me that there was no DNA under the on the body or under the skin or on the skin, or there was no hair lashes or eyelashes, hairs. There was no blood. There was no saliva. There was no sweat. None of those things. So whoever did that in that short amount of time to do that 4 times had to go through a lot of planning. And I just find it amazing, astonishing how people can, you know, not put that dot together and think that, all right, somebody had to have planned this, that they would think that the planning stopped at the murder and didn't plan anything to get away, you know, didn't plan or do anything to protect their vehicle, you know, stuff like that. And so that's one thing. Man, there was another thing that I was going to bring up, but the knife. You know, we've seen a lot of people go do some crazy stuff. Well, where I was going with that, let me go back even further, is in my opinion, if there was a new car outside that Bryan Kohberger had never seen, or if there was a boyfriend's car out there, those would not be elements of the perfect crime that he might be trying to commit. Now, if you throw in the aspect of a high profile crime, which there was some text messages between him and a buddy of his where he had, you know, talked about the want to be involved in a high profile crime. He talked about being the officer that solved those high profile crimes. But, you know, given everything that was going on, the likelihood of him not being a police officer is pretty high. So the likelihood of him not being that detective that solves high profile crimes is probably unattainable. And so if you're not the cop, you don't want to be the victim, there's another role you can play. Now, you know, a couple things that happen to make a crime high profile: attraction, you know, beautiful victims, which is what you have in all 4 of them, and multiple victims. And so if the thought was multiple victims and you didn't really care if there was a car outside then, or if a boyfriend was there, because it would just add to it. So that's kind of where I'm going with that aspect. And as far as just one knife, and does 2 knives mean 2 killers? How many times have we seen a mass murder event, usually with like guns, and there's, you know, a gunman? Do they usually walk in with just one gun? No.
I mean, no, but I
Okay, so
also
why
think
should
that
we
he
expect that
only,
somebody that's going to commit a crime like this wouldn't bring a backup knife?
well, I think because I think he was wearing one of those pullover like jumpsuit type things that had no belt buckle, and I think he just
I
had
agree.
the knife. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I agree. I agree. I'm just saying I agree.
Right, right. Um, but to kind of touch on that, I mean, I just really feel like yes, there was a lot of planning that went into this. There was. And the reason that I don't think that the extra cars bothered him is I think he thought they were mostly asleep. He was going to go, this just kind of a possible working theory that he went in, left the door open because I think they said it was almost like halfway open. And to me, that's like a big amount to kind of leave. But anyway, I think initially that he may have just gone upstairs to go for either Maddie or Kaylee, whichever his target was. And I think, he was going to be like, look, you know, don't scream or, I'll kill you, and take that one person out and go to a secondary location. So I don't know that he meant to kill them in the house per se. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But the plan was thwarted with Kaylee, and I'm not victim blaming or I'm not anything like that, but it went south when Kaylee was in there. So then the fight was on. Xana heard it. Santa was, because Santa was still up, and I just think he had tunnel vision, and he didn't really. I think this was like his first crime, and the nerve. He was trying to work up his nerve, and I don't think he was focused on the other cars outside. I mean, I know what you're saying, and I don't disagree, but I'm just saying I think sometimes the killers like that with the rage and stuff that they get and everything, that I think he kind of had tunnel vision and he went in to do what he was going to do, but then it went south and he didn't have a plan for it going south, because he didn't feel like it was going to go south.
Right.
I personally think that he was going to take, either Maddie or Kaylee to a secondary location. But I just think that's a possible working theory.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean, but there's just at this point, unless they find some sort of like journal or manifesto or some sort of, and it says something about his plans or intentions. I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that, to be honest with you.
Right. But I'm saying, I mean, not to get you off, but I mean, I'm just saying that because people are like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. In that scenario, it makes sense, that he went in there to get one person, bring one person out, take that person to a secondary location.
Right.
I don't think he planned to be in the house 10 minutes is what I'm saying. I don't. So if that was the case, I can see him bringing only one knife. You know what I'm saying? Because if the intent was to, overpower the person, put their hand over their mouth and say, don't scream or I'll kill you, and have a knife to the neck or something like that, and you guide them downstairs and out the house and that type of thing. And, somebody may not have screamed because they didn't want their roommates hurt or whatever. I think that was his plan. But then once he went up there, it didn't happen that way. And so in that scenario, one knife makes sense, instead of two.
Right.
So, and I do think that, there's something in Blaine. I really feel that, that that may have been the secondary location. I mean, there's a woman that said she heard the dog barking at, like right after this happened, and everything. I don't know if he may have stashed the murder weapon there. I don't know if he had, because there were like log cabins and stuff out there, and I don't know if he had like,
I'm not aware of that.
A cabin out there or something, trying to take evidence and stuff. I mean, but anyway, so we'll see. I mean, we can only speculate at this time because we haven't seen all the evidence. But I'm just saying that to me, that's kind of what I think happened. He meant to take one person out. He didn't, and take them out of the house. He didn't go in there to the intent to kill 4 people with one knife. I just don't. I don't see it. It doesn't.
Right. I talked to people close to the case, and that was kind of close to one person's thoughts. Their thought was that maybe perhaps his intention was to go in there and only kill one person and sneak in, sneak out, and leave this big mystery. Like, house full of people, one person brutally, their life brutally taken. And they think that things went kind of south at some point, and that's why the arrest. And this was person pretty close to the case, so I thought it was a possibility. I agree that would also fit the criteria of everything. The fact that there was a car out there, the boyfriend's car, the everything. I mean, it would fit everything as well in that agenda, as far as also mass life taking. I think that both of those two theories, in my opinion, probably run the highest. As far as this being a rage motivated crime, I don't see it. And the reason being is because of the sounds. There's no sounds of emotion in this crime.
Well, the reason I say rage is because of Kaylee, and the amount of stab wounds. I think he was mad at her or that rage came out at her because she was thwarting what he was trying to do.
I mean,
he did.
That's quite possible. That's quite possible.
So, because from what I remember reading from, oh, go ahead.
The other thing too is he may have only needed a strike. If he went into that room and both females were asleep, I mean, this is 4 a.m. They had just gotten home. They were intoxicated. They'd just fallen asleep an hour earlier. So they were probably in the most heaviest part of their sleep. And, he walks in there. He's probably not, having to do much for the first person. As the second person wakes up and move, he's going to have to act quickly. He's probably going to have to be a little bit more out of control. With the first person, that person's asleep. So, you can probably hit that person more precisely where you want. Somebody moving is a different story. And so that's probably has a lot to do with why the veracity and the carnage was different. It's probably because of that. But you make a lot of valid points. I'm going to answer a few more questions, Steph. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Do you have any final words for everybody before we sign you off?
Well, I just want to make a kind of brief comments about what you just said. The thing is that if you look at the autopsy report, if I remember correctly, I haven't seen the autopsy report in a while, but Maddie was sort of like one to the throat. I
don't think I've ever seen an autopsy report.
Either it was, I don't know that I've seen it or if I heard it. I don't remember. It's been a while, so I could be incorrect in what I'm saying, but I remember thinking at the time, okay, he killed her instantly. I think the plan was probably to, like I said, take her to another location. But when he saw Kaylee, then he just decided, well, I'm gonna not essay her, but I'm gonna unalive her here. And then Kaylee started fighting, and he started to, let's just say, there started to be issues with the knife.
Right.
Well, when Ethan comes out, if I remember correctly, that's also to the throat. So I think I
don't know any of those things. I've talked to several family members of a couple of the victims, not just one, and I have not heard any of those things. Not one. Now, what I have heard was that majority, and this came from the coroner, majority of of what had occurred was to the torso.
Right.
And I've seen things that I've seen part of the room.
Hello?
I've seen part of the room that nobody else has. I've seen the splatter that's on there on the floor. I would believe that came from somebody being struck in the torso.
Okay, yeah, I was getting to the point of the torso because I feel like Xana got it to the torso, but the reason that I think he had to go to the torso is the knife was probably already damaged, and that would have been the easiest place to unalive somebody at that point, because if you try to do it some other way, it may have been ineffective. So
I don't know. I just know that the coroner said that majority, all of them, were to the torso, and multiple stabbings to all of them.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I was just saying, but
No, I understand.
that's the soft area where, the problem with the torso is that, I don't want to be graphic, but people have a tendency to bleed out, with those, it can't be fixed in time. Not that
There's
I'm
a
saying
lot of
that's
blood
what
coming out
occurred,
of the
but
back
I'm
of the
just saying,
house.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like the torso is like, there's going to be, a lot of blood because there's no bone. So it goes through all that, well, organs and stuff like that. I don't want to be graphic, but that type of thing. But anyway, I don't know. I heard Ethan it was like a throat thing. Like, I don't know if he's waiting for Ethan to come out and he just,
I have no idea.
whatever. And then
I've talked to
followed.
I've talked to victims' family members, and that's something I don't ask, to be honest with you. I've never asked any of them. So I honestly, truly have no idea. I've not heard anything about those things being released to the public. I've heard a lot of speculation on them, but the only thing that I've actually heard that was concrete was the coroner say that they were struck multiple times in the torso. I'm sure there could have been more areas, but I think that the main target area, based on what the coroner said, was the torso. Which makes sense. I mean, if you hit somebody in the lung, they're not going to scream.
Right. And see, here's the other reason why I think I just want to say this, that'll be it for me, I guess.
Okay.
I feel like he went in there with a knife to take one person. Your comment earlier about, well, if he'd have taken a gun, other people would have heard it. But he also could have just like strangled her without people hearing it. I feel like the knife was brought in there as like he was going to come in there and, like I said, put it to her throat, put her hand over her mouth, so you scream, I'll kill everybody else in here. You and everybody else in here. I think that's what the intent was when he went in, but that whole intent changed at some point. But I was just saying, that's why, like what you were saying about, no, I didn't think he would ever have an intention of bringing a gun, because again, to your point, it makes, everybody in the house would hear it and you would have an issue. But if he went in there to just strangle her, to just kill her, just to kill her and have the thrill kill, he could have just done it with his hands. I mean, he's a big guy and all that. In her intoxicated
maybe.
State,
I mean, but we're going into a lot of things that we just don't know. I mean, the only person that could really answer a lot of those questions are going to be that guy, as far as intent and stuff. Right. And I get you. I mean, is it possible that that was the intention? That was, what he was doing? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it's possible. To me, I think that based on the evidence that's out there, it sounds like a thrill type of situation. Like I said, I don't hear any sounds of emotion or things like that from the audio 50 feet away, things that you would expect to hear. So, those things, plus the fact that we had Chief Fry say that when they arrived there, and this was in the second or first, can't remember which one, I have it saved on one of my videos. I recommend going through our videos and maybe you can find it for me. But he says something to the effect that when they got there, the door was still left open. And he was asked about the front door, and he says he had no idea about the front door. And he was asked multiple times about the front door. No idea about the front door, but he knows about a door being open when they arrived. From what I understand from people close to this was that the back door, sliding glass door, was open when police and everybody arrived, and they believe that it was open during the time that the crime had occurred and remained open that entire time. I think there was a mix-up between back and front door whenever it got to the news.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a couple of reasons he left that door open, and not just to, not leave DNA. I think there was more to it than that. But and what I was saying was merely speculation. But the reason that I'm saying it is because a lot of people are like this crime on the surface, if you look at it, doesn't make sense. And a lot of people's eyes, they think, well, there must be a second killer, there must be this and this. So I was trying to connect the dots for them
Right.
and so to speak, about what may have possibly happened, what may have possibly
Right.
been the scenario, and then all that makes sense. And then it's less likely for people to believe that there was a second killer or that Bryan Kohberger is not the person. So,
Right.
that's why I'm trying to explain this is a scenario where absolutely Bryan Kohberger could have been the person. It just didn't happen like Bryan Kohberger wanted it to. So then it went amiss, then it went awry. And because it's 4 people, people think, well, one person can possibly kill 4 people. But if they're asleep, if they're intoxicated, he catches them by surprise, that's one person. He fights with Kaylee, he comes downstairs. If he slashed Ethan in the throat, which I think, or he did probably, or whatever, or maybe it was the torso, I don't know. Then, there's that. Well, then that happens and Xana runs out, you hear the crying and this and that, and then, and so forth. And then that happened, and then he's out of the house. But that level of rage can do that in that amount of time. The thing is, and to one point about Dylan, I'm not a fan of the 8-hour, delay. But as far as knowing what was going on, what I think happened was, if you read it, it's like she said Kaylee was, playing with her dog or whatever. It may have been Kaylee, or it may have been, the killer putting the dog in the room. But
I don't think so.
what I think happened was, I don't know, but with the dog, the point I'm getting to is with the dog barking, because, if the dog was barking, maybe she didn't hear everything that was going on. So people are like, well, her roommates are up there getting murdered, and this and that. But maybe the dog was barking to the point that she didn't hear exactly what was going on. Is my point. So maybe that's why she's a little confused about the situation.
It's possible, but
I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's possible. But the other thing is too, if Kaylee was struck in the lung and she begins to gurgle, and the noise of jumping up and down, the gurgling could sound like somebody playing with a dog, and a dog grabbing onto something and doing a playful growl, that type of noise. And in reality, it's somebody who's choking on their own blood. And so there's a lot of reasons. I mean, we can go down those avenues. What I'd like to do is just kind of knock out the avenues that don't make sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because those are easier to do based on the information we know. Like all the other stuff, it'd be really hard at this point. And as far as why some people may be confused or not confused or unsure or not unsure about the case or don't know or whatever the case may be, one thing I say is that at this point, we have something that's equivalent to like a 10-piece problem, and all we know are the first 3 pieces. So I mean, it might be pointing to a pretty obvious answer at the end. In my opinion, it does. But if it doesn't make sense still, there's still a few more pieces we're not aware of. And maybe once those pieces come into play, it'll clear it up. I'm not too concerned, to be honest with you, with the information that I know. And it's not a lot more than what's out there. But I feel that I'm not too concerned. I don't think law enforcement is all that concerned either in this case. One of the common themes that I've heard is that law enforcement has told some, or I don't know if all, I'm not talking to all the victims' family members, but they have talked to some. And what I've been told by them was that law enforcement told them, we wish we could tell you more. There's just a lot of evidence, and, we got them. And, and that's something they can't tell because there's gag order and things like that. But they've been assured, now, there's some questions still because they aren't exactly sure what the police mean by that. Could it be some, gum and cheek maybe? But, if somebody's saying that, could it be like some, tongue in cheek? Where it's just kind of saying something just so that they can get off their back or whatever the case may be. It's possible. It's highly possible that could happen, but it's highly unlikely. The reason being is, one, you never want to tell anybody anything like, hey, we got, you don't make promises in investigations like this. In any investigation, you don't promise a victim's family member that you're going to find their loved one alive, or you're going to find the person that took their loved one away or any of those things, because there's no guarantee in that. There is absolutely no guarantee. And for them to say those type of things to victims' family members, multiple victims' family members, tells me that they probably got a lot. But I thank you again, Steph.
Yeah.
Please let us know. We should do this again. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I did have a final comment, but we'll leave it for the next time.
All right. Well, you have a good one. You have a great night.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye. All right, I'm going to answer a few questions real quick. Let's see. I'm just going to say, Myra Fosta says, Daniel, what are your thoughts on the KB survey? I think he meant BK survey. I don't think it's good, to be honest with you. Every time that survey has been used, and especially the defense's witness, every time he's used that survey, it didn't go so well for the defense. Every time it was a guilty verdict. So I don't think it's something that was positive for Bryan Kohberger. I don't think it's something that's going to work in his favor. I hope it ends up moving the case out of the area. I think that would be the most beneficial thing. I really do. Rachel says Bryan moved to Washington after this position. Not sure what a part-time security gig while in college has to do with this. It was during COVID, letting people go kept one guy that was already there. No, the thing is, you have a full-time security guard officer, and this is the way the security schools work. You have the full-time, and you have your part-timers, and then you have like these people that are like waiting and standing or whatever, and they'll do some work every now and then, and a lot of it also is to make sure that they retain a license. At least that's how it is in Texas. And second of all, this wasn't right before he moved to Washington. This was August 2021, like almost a year before, or in June or July in 2021, a year before he moved to Washington. So that's not accurate. But what is concerning, and like I mentioned it before, is in his letter for resignation, he stated that I understand that if I don't resign I could be terminated. And I'm paraphrasing there. Let's see. I'm going to roll through these as fast as I can. No PhD criminal student is going to be driving around and around the 1122 King in his very white vehicle with cameras to commit 4 brutal homicides. None of us amateurs would either. Well, somebody did, and they got caught. And the thing is too, like, you look at this and say, this guy couldn't have committed this, wouldn't committed that. Well, Ted Bundy was somebody that a lot of people thought that he didn't commit his crimes either. And he convinced a lot of people too. And like I said, somebody made a lot of dumb mistakes. Why are you surprised that they got caught? Just being truth and honest here. Let's see. How many vehicles were really there that night? Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and maybe Ethan's Jeep. Thinking 3, 4. Yeah, I think there was like 4 vehicles they ended up towing, maybe 5. But I think the 5th one was Ethan's brother's vehicle that ended up getting towed because he ended up being there before police, or I don't know. I'm not familiar with. I'm not 100% on that story. Let's see. Tunde was a law student, drove around in his cream-colored VW and committed many murders. Ooh, that's true. That is true. The problem is a lot of these folks put themselves in Bryan Kohberger's position, and they think that if I was a put in this position, if I was a PhD student, I wouldn't do these things to ruin it or do those other things. They don't understand, what else is going on with this person. Right. It's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. Just see the top. You don't understand the rest of the stuff. And so just because he's in that position, he may not feel the same way as you do about being in that position. I mean, there's a lot of people of high importance that you wouldn't think would do a crime. I mean, Alex Murdaugh was an attorney. I don't think a lot of people would assume that their attorney would go and kill their wife and son. He did a lot of crazy stuff. And so it is what it is. Let's see. I'm going to try to scroll through these. Thought I saw something about the autopsy report will never be released until trial. I agree. I have never seen an autopsy report. I don't know anything about any injuries or any details of any injuries. I have never asked anybody that is familiar with the case what the injuries look like. That is not my business and not my place to ask anybody, to be honest with you. You know, a horrific crime happened during trial. Those things would come up. But I'm not going to, you know, those family members are going to go through that, and hearing that, then I don't want to re-victimize them or re-traumatize them by asking them some of those type of questions. You know, my questions when it comes to like talking with the families and stuff is more like trying to debunk some of the stuff that's out there, some of the things that people are saying, like Kaylee didn't want to be back there. She had already moved out. No, not at all. Christy told me 100% had not moved anything out. Everything was 100% in that house still. She was going to move back to her hometown, where her mom lives, and she had a room that was fully furnished, and she didn't want to go and buy a one of those storages, and they already had the lease there at the King Road residence until June, so she was going to utilize that until she went to Austin in February-ish, is what Christy had told me. She said that she had planned on going back, not just that time, but several other times to go back. She needed to go back. There was other things that she needed to do as well. There was never a situation where she didn't want to go there that weekend. She wanted to go there that weekend. I think that weekend was her mom's birthday. And so instead of hanging out with her mom, she went and hung out with her friends and showed her friends her car. So that was her choice, her decision. It wasn't really anybody trying to, like, she didn't want to or any of those things. Like all those things just are out of this mind, ridiculous. Somebody in a comment section says, "Oh, I have an idea. I think she didn't want to be there." And then 50,000 people run with it. It's crazy. Let's see. I think the Chapins might have some more info than we do. Maybe. I don't think so, to be honest with you. Now, a lot of people are saying, you know, that 2 a.m. will never be the same, and that the Chapins had said that. And I think that might be the case, you know, obviously, but it doesn't mean that that's when the murders happen. That could be when he texted them that he was back. Remember, he had arrived back to the, this is there that approximately 1:45, everybody had arrived back to the 1122 King Road residence. Well, we already know that Kaylee and Maddie was closer to 2 o'clock. It was 1:56. I also know that those text messages and voicemail to Jack were after 2 o'clock. So highly doubt that somebody's capable of changing their voice and all those other things to leave those behind. So yeah, it didn't happen earlier. Let's see. One would think it would have to be sealed, autopsy reports due to pending case. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything about any autopsy reports. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. And I believe you became a member. It's not starring thing, so I'm going to have to go through it. I saw somebody, Chris, where was he become a member? Yeah, it is. Robert P became the newest YouTube member. Congratulations and thank you. Daniel, do you mean the tunnels? I don't know anything about tunnels. You know, no, I'm not going to ask anybody that either. That's kind of, I think that's rude. Stalking. You know, I know a lot of creators didn't touch on this, but there was a document related to that court hearing. And when it clarifies the stalking aspect, it refers to there's no evidence or proof that Bryan Kohberger was stalking or following just one of the victims on social media. I'm pretty sure that means all of them. I don't think he was. I've seen some things that say otherwise. It's kind of weird. I saw a profile download of Bryan Kohberger's Instagram. It shows them there. I'm not gonna lie, and the email that's attached to this Instagram profile were the emails that were attached to him, including the one on Reddit. And so it's weird. I honestly didn't think it was real, but it appears to be. And I didn't think he followed them, and especially after Bill Thompson said he didn't. But then again, there's also the timing issue. You know, if he started following them after the murders happened, then that's not evidence of him stalking anyone leading up to the murders, right? That's afterwards. A lot of people started following them afterwards. So it could be that. Trash colleague coming in, becoming the newest member. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Wait, did I say trash? Tash. I can't read with my dang. I apologize 1000%. Can't read with my damn glasses on. Plus, it's getting kind of late in the show, and my contacts are drying up. No excuses. I should have read it better. Everyone drives their own car to the murder. I mean, if you drove somebody else's car, you got to get away with things. You got to get away with more things. It's crazy. Crazy. No security cameras in the 70s. They are now, and they caught a white Elantra without a front license plate. But somehow, that's not good enough. Let's see. Yeah, anybody that wants to have any respectful debate, I'm more than happy to bring you up. Let's see. I'll scroll through these pretty quick. Art Reese also becoming a member. Thank you, my man. Appreciate you. Yarn Lover Regina says, love being here, Daniel. Thank you for your intelligent conversation. Love to you all. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yarn Lover Regina. Oh, I'm at the bottom. All right. You followed suit with your wrong version. You corrected them with the equally wrong spelling. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't me because I'm not spelling anything. But I appreciate everybody joining. I wanted to answer and get anybody who may have donated or put in become a member, any of those type of things. Thank you guys so much. I have one right here. Okay, never mind. It's the same one. Guys, I'll be back probably on Wednesday. We'll be probably looking back into some of the things in the Linda Lane footage. We might have Jeff H., a fan of the show, on the show. He trying to set that up. I need you to email me again, my man, or respond. We were emailing, and I got to get a yes or no from you. If it happens, then we'll talk about it. If not, we'll have something else to talk about. But until then, guys, y'all be safe. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Ring that notification bell if you haven't done so. Even if you don't agree with me, there's no need to be upset or call people names or any of those things. We can all agree to disagree at the end of the day. With that being said, guys, y'all have a blessed night. Peace.